Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another TheeSportsScoop video, and welcome into the first episode of the Bust or Boom series, year 3. We are doing this last year and the year before. If you are new in this series, we preview each team going to the 2022-2023 NFL season, talking about their key players, key offseason additions, their rookies that they drafted, the most important ones, and then kind of at the end, previewing the season, as we will be doing throughout the video, but giving a full preview on the season. And then we will be giving you guys our record predictions. And as you saw by the title today, we are doing the very Super Bowl contenders, Buffalo Bills. We are in New York. Neither of us are New York fans, but Buffalo, they've always had a soft spot in my heart. I always like to see them succeed. I am joined as always by my host, Dylan Challen. Dylan, as a Dolphins fan, how excited are you to talk about the Bills?
Usually I'd try to find something bad to say, but not much I can.
Yeah, very good team. But we'll be kind of breaking it all down for you guys. So make sure you guys stay tuned. Let's get into the video. All right, so the first thing we go into, we're going to have to brush off the rust a little bit, Dylan, and that is the key players segment, talking about, we have, a couple key players here, defensive side, offensive side. We're going to be previewing them for this season. And obviously the first player we need to talk about is the staple of their franchise, quarterback Josh Allen. Obviously has been getting better every single year. Last season was fantastic. Obviously I think it goes without say that Josh Allen has solidified himself as a top 5 guy, going for over 4,000 yards last season, 4,436 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. He's just been fantastic. And going to this year, dare we say we expect another step up, maybe 5,000 yards. We'll obviously talk about they've drafted some rookies to help him out. Dylan, when you look into this season, how are you going to preview Josh Allen? What is he, what's the outlook for him this season?
I'm not going to say that I expect another increase in
Yeah.
production from Josh Allen, just because the production he has is ridiculous. And he lost one of his favorite targets, Cole Beasley, and Emmanuel Sanders. And they did add pieces to help them out, but they also lost a couple pieces on the O-line. So the offense, I think, had a net negative on the offseason, but we'll get there when we get there. Josh Allen specifically, his game is pretty much flawless at this point. There's a few little nitpicky things I can go after, like his accuracy on the move.
Yeah. And I
Sometimes
still think the interceptions, you want to get that below 10 this year.
yeah,
That's what I want to see.
interceptions, turnovers in general. But I think altogether, Josh Allen is certainly a top 5 quarterback in my opinion. He's third. There's not really much to critique. He's pretty much perfect. Like you see all these teams going in and they're getting their crazy talented college quarterback, and they're thinking, I want this guy to be the next Josh Allen. So he's kind of like the new blueprint for what you want out of a guy. And if you have to work him 2 years to get him to that third year Josh Allen jump, that's what teams are looking at. So I don't think there's much more he can do to jump, but obviously he's a key player and he's going to be a very important piece of this team this year.
Yeah, I mean, this is always the funny part when we talk about the teams with the fantastic quarterbacks. There's not much to say. Again, I think the interceptions, you want to lower that a little bit, but besides that, he is just the like you said, the prototypical quarterback. And I think even you saw Trevor Lawrence coming out like 6'6" or 6'5", 6'6", like really big frame, can rush, has a cannon of an arm, is accurate. Again, he's the prototypical quarterback. And I think going to this season, I would agree. I don't think there has to be a jump, but I think there has to be something little that changes that per se gets them over the Chiefs this year, gets them into the Super Bowl this year. There has to be something that happens. And I still think he's a fantastic quarterback, but you can't have games that we had last year, like the Falcons game, like the Jaguars game, where there are certain games where he is very, very poor. Because you don't really see that much with Aaron Rodgers. You don't really see that with Tom Brady, and you don't really see that with Patrick Mahomes. So I do think there's an argument there that maybe he's up there with those quarterbacks, but definitely I think there's room for improvement. But in terms of the key player thing, there's no more key of a player than Josh Allen for the Buffalo Bills. He is the gem to this offense. But I do think maybe stuff changed. No more Dable. I do think they obviously hired quarterback coach to be the offensive coordinator, so I still think he will be fine. But I think Dable will have some kind of impact because we know how much he contributed to Josh Allen's success in the past. But I think Josh Allen is going to be fantastic this year. Don't expect much else besides superiority over other quarterbacks. But Dylan, we'll go on to another offensive player on the offensive side of the ball, and that's Stefan Diggs, wide receiver, who we got past he's going to be traded to the Cowboys random offseason thing where Trayvon Diggs, that there's no actual potency to that rumor, but we have Stefan Diggs. Obviously, they got him from Minnesota 2 years ago when we did our first Buster Boom series. But I mean, you kind of look at Stefan Diggs and you look at Josh Allen, and that's kind of the reason why both are so good. But Dylan, again, such a key player. Is there much to say about Stefan Diggs? How would you kind of preview him going into the season?
I think he's being slept on at this point by the majority of the NFL community. We're looking at the new corporation of wide receiver ones in the league, and you're looking at Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Terry McLaurin, et cetera, et cetera.
Jalen Waddle. Okay, come on, let's.
Well, I'm saying that's the younger guys that were just drafted recently, and and then there's obviously Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, and the other guys, but people are forgetting about Stefan Diggs. Like, I'm seeing him consistently left out of top 5 lists where he might not be a top 5 receiver, but he should be in more top 5 lists than he is.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of just off of random lists I'm talking about now, but in general, Stefan Diggs has I think the second best route running ability in the league behind Devontae Adams. He has hands that do not drop the football. I think second or third best hands in the league. He has the size. He's fast. He has pretty much everything that you need. And his stats have been excellent. In 2020, he had the most receptions in the league. And this year, although last year he was clearly the wide receiver one, and every year he's been with the Bills, he's been clearly the wide receiver one. Last year specifically, there might be a little bit more competition for targets, which is why I think that we're going to see a little bit of a decrease in productivity from Diggs in terms of receptions. Yards and touchdowns will probably stay around the same. But now that they added Khalil Shakir, now that I think Gabe Davis is going to have a bigger role in the offense, O.J. Howard is there now, and then receiving backs, it's going to be a much more interesting thing with James Cook out of the backfield. I think there's a little bit more competition for targets, which might hinder Diggs's production in terms of receptions. It shouldn't be a big deal. Diggs is still there.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I think it's a contrast because I think it could either be on one side, Diggs, like you said, gets less targets, but then you see what they brought in. Obviously, they lost Sanders, they lost Beasley, and I think if you compare them to Diggs and Shakir, they were the guys who were taking up the targets. Like Beasley was the monster in the middle of the field, and so was Stefan Diggs. But I'm talking about that was Beasley's game, was slants, getting outside to the numbers, and then obviously Emmanuel Sanders is more of a deeper guy. He didn't really kind of eat into too many of the targets. But I think you look at Khalil Shakir, who I think is kind of the only guy you would see maybe take up some of the targets. He's kind of like a Deebo Samuel kind of guy. They'll be using him a lot in running play action. They'll be using that guy a lot, in the backfield. So I actually think Stefan Diggs could have an increase in targets. I think they got rid of the two guys who actually will take away were taking away with most of Diggs. And we saw last year at 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns. And again, this is me being nitpicky, but I want to see Diggs get into those 12, 15 touchdown numbers, like those high touchdown numbers, like Devontae Adams and guys like that. And I think that's why he was slept on. And I think the year before, I think touchdowns has always been the thing with Diggs where he doesn't get too many of them. And obviously the Bills offense is still very high powered. But I think, again, going to the season, and I would agree, I think Stefan Diggs is I wouldn't say slept on, but you look at the guys who people put ahead of him and consistently, and there's this gap that people see between him and certain receivers that I just don't think are there, like him and Tyreek Hill, or him and I Devontae Adams. Obviously, we know Devontae Adams is better, but I think Diggs is an elite receiver. Diggs is a top 5 guy, top 7 guy. Again, I haven't reviewed my top 10 receiver list in a while. I'll have to do that, but I think Dylan, like you said, one of the best route runners in the league, best hands. He'll be great for Josh Allen, and they'll be another lethal duo. But let's move into another exciting one. This one is where maybe we'll have differing opinions, or at least this is a more interesting one. We'll move to the defensive side of the ball, where we have Tredavius White, cornerback, who was out for majority of this season with a torn ACL. Dylan, does he bounce back? People still have him in that top 3 corner, top 5 corner list. How important? Obviously, they lost Levi Wallace this offseason, which I think is a little bit bigger of a loss than people may perceive it to be. But obviously, they drafted Kyrie Elam as well. How does Trayvon Diggs need to bounce back? Tredavious White need to bounce back this year?
That's a tough question because I don't think he's absolutely integral to that defense. I think they have a lot of pieces that are going to be able to make up for the loss that he could have off of an injury. Like last year, they were the first ranked defense in the league, and he was injured for a long time. And they have Teron Johnson, they have Saran Neal, they have although Levi Wallace was great when he played, they have guys that are able to fill in the slots. And now having Kaiir Elam is much more important. But if they have Tredavious White on one side and they have Kaiir Elam on the other side, and Kaiir Elam is the real deal, this team cannot be thrown out. It's we're looking at Tredavious White, and if he bounces back from his injury and goes back to his normal form, and Kaiir Elam is that guy, we're looking at borderline invincibility on defense.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say it's of the utmost importance that Tredavious White returns to his top 3, top 5 form. But if he does, this team doesn't lose.
Yeah, and I have this weird feeling. This is completely just going off what I think. I have a weird feeling Tredavious White will come back potentially even better. I think, and again, I just think we look at Tredavious White and you kind of look at the top 5 corners, top 10 corners of recent years, and Tredavious White is right up there. He is a fantastic, fantastic cornerback. I think you look at corners who can run the routes of receivers, and Tredavious White is the image of that. That's who he is. And I think it was the same with JC Jackson, guys who are just so good at understanding the receiver position that they can defend it so well. And again, I think you're right. I think Kaiir Elam was a fantastic selection. I think you look how and we'll talk about it when we go into rookies, putting him into that scheme with Tredavious White will be fantastic. Again, I think Levi Wallace would have been a good guy to hold on to. Obviously they didn't. I think that would solidify the cornerback group. And I'm sure we're missing some more other kind of role player guys. But then obviously we'll get into the 2 safeties they have behind them. That secondary is going to be very good. Very, very good. So I'm very excited to kind of see how Tredavious White bounces back. But I do think he's had time to recover. He'll have the entire offseason. And again, I completely agree. And I think that's the Bills had a complete intention with taking LM just in case Tredavious White didn't bounce back like he did. But I think he'll be the guy he was. But Dylan, we're going to bounce back into the offensive side because I do think this guy's important. It's another receiver, and that's Gabe Davis.
Okay.
You lose Beasley, you lose Emmanuel Sanders. I still think that that Gabe Davis is going to be very important. I was definitely, and I think Charlie, and maybe you fell into this trap after he had that ridiculous Chiefs game where people were like, well, he's so good, and he's so good, blah, blah. And he was very, very poor. Or not poor, just not statistically dominant the entire regular season. But I think he could step into an important role. I love Gabe Davis. And I think he was a guy who we put into the key player section last year when really no one was talking about him. What do you think for him this year? And what kind of role does he now need to play with with Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley gone?
I think Cole Beasley has no impact on him because Cole Beasley was just a slot guy. And I don't think Gabe Davis touches that slot role for 25% of the snaps, maybe at most. But I would say Gabe Davis is going to have to be a Z receiver. There's not going to be another guy that's going to be on that boundary other than Stefan Diggs that can go up with defenders and contest for catches. I think Gabe Davis is going to have to fill into that role. And if he doesn't, they're going to replace him because I don't think even though he had that great game against the Chiefs, statistically, he was amazing. They played very soft coverage on him the entire game. 3
of the touchdowns are wide open.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that he has gotten even close to proving himself yet. So is he a key player? Because if he goes up and he goes and plays like people think he might, and he becomes an elite receiver, sure. It's the same thing with the cornerback room. It's if Gabriel Davis goes into this season and is capable of putting up 1,000+ yards and 5 touchdowns, this team is unstoppable.
Yeah.
But it's not that important that he does, because even if he doesn't, this team will still be really, really, really good. So I think Gabriel Davis, the necessity for him is for him to stay healthy and for him to get open. He doesn't need to be another Stefan Diggs. He just needs to be a safe pair of hands for Josh Allen.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at as well. I think my whole thing with Gabe Davis is he has so much potential. You look at him physically, the speed he has, he's a good route runner. You saw him. I mean, one of the Kansas City Chiefs touchdowns, I'll completely credit him. He was wide open, but he put the corner in a blender. It was a post and he stuck it outside and just completely left the
He
defender
knocked
in
him
the
down,
dust,
yeah.
knocked him down. Great route, really good route runner, big body. I think there's no reason he can't be. And I do think there's been a little bias in Josh Allen's arm because I think he generally targets Stefan Diggs, but that's with every quarterback in their wide receiver one. So maybe that's what was barring Gabe Davis from getting, those high numbers. But I do think that going into next season, Gabe Davis will get a lot more targets. And like I was talking about, we'll get into Clear Shakir. I don't think he'll be as much of a threat to them on the receiving kind of side of the game. But I do think he's important. I think Gabe Davis, again, has all the potential to be a very elite wide receiver too. I think I agree with you, Z guy and a guy who can go up and contest catches down the sideline. But we'll flip back now to the defensive side of the ball. And here's what we can do. We can go Poyer and Hyde together, or we can do them separately. What do you think we should do? Because I think they're very much a tandem.
They're a tandem. Let's do them together.
Yeah. What do you think?
I think that's the best safety duo in the league.
Yeah.
And I don't think people recognize how good they are in pass coverage, how important they are as ball hawks, because the turnovers that they create for that team, they amount to a lot in the long run. You know how I am with turnovers. They don't specifically intercept the ball all too much. I think Micah Hyde had 5 last season, which is a lot. But correct me if I'm wrong.
Poyer had 5.
Poyer had 5.
Yeah.
And Micah Hyde probably had 2 or 3.
Yeah.
But that 8 turnovers from a safety core, you don't see that. That's unbelievably good. And then you look
the Hyde had 5 also. They both had 5.
Oh, they both had 5.
Yeah.
Oh, so I was right. Okay.
Yeah.
But that's 10 interceptions from a safety core. That's amazing. And they also are elite tacklers. So they're the real deal. My only concern with that safety core is I don't know who steps in with an injury. So if Poyer or Hyde goes down, I'm honestly not sure who's the next guy on their roster up. I mean, they could bring in, who would it be?
I'm not sure.
No, I'm bothered.
I'm sure there are guys who it'll be, but I'm definitely not sure. I think when you look at Poyer and Hyde, I think why they are so lethal as a duo is because they can both play. Like, you don't see Hyde as a strong safety. You don't see Poyer as a free safety. They both have versatility to one guy go play strong, one guy play free. They can both interchange out, which I think is extremely important, something that a lot of people don't notice. And I mean, in coverage, Jordan Poyer has been fantastic. You look at 2 guys who can, I think Poyer's more of the coverage guy you see, although Hyde still does it. But you look at a safety who can line up against a tight end and just completely shut them down.
Yes.
And then you have another guy, you're both getting 5 picks. I just think they're ball hawking guys, really hard hitters. Both they almost had 200 tackles combined. They were just fantastic. And I know there's some stat. I'm very upset. I know there's some stat. I was watching some video, but Poyer had top 5, top 3 coverage grade going in their last year. And I think that'll be the same thing again. Although both are in their 30s, I think they're both 31. Does play into it. You're probably getting a year or 2 more of kind of high production. But again, I feel like safeties are a position where you generally can be a little bit older and still be good.
Yeah.
But I just think, you kind of look at 2 safeties who are really just so important to this team and so important again to a young secondary. And I think, if you're Tredavius White, if you're Kyler Lamb, having those guys behind you is just so significant, and being able to pass off receivers, it just offers so much more scheme wise to a defense to have 2 guys who can play like that. Both can blitz a passer.
Not only being able to pass off a guy to a safety, being able to try to jump the route, knowing that if the guy catches it, they're behind you to tackle them. That is what I think is the most important. I think that's the most important because if you're a guy like Levi Wallace, who's very good in passes broken up, he went in and to jump footballs and knock them down, knowing that either Jordan Poyer, Matt Milano, or Micah Hyde were going to be right there to tackle him if he missed it. And it happened often.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to wrap it up. I think you look at key additions on this team, and there really is key players on this team. There are a lot, and this is why this team can be so good. Every single facet of the game, they have key players, they have talented players in. And I think, this year it should be no different. I think they should be contenders like they have been. But Dylan, now we'll move into our next segment, and that's the off-season additions. And I want to save the best for last. And we know who the best one is. But the first guy they got is another receiver who we kind of forgot to talk about when we talked about this, and that's division rival Jamison Crowder, who will most likely fill that slot role. I think it's a good signing. There's not too much to say, but Dylan, what do you think his importance will be going into the season?
Safe pair of hands.
Yeah.
It's pretty much all I got to say. He's a veteran. He's been in the league for a while. He's been able to consistently put up yards from short passes. He's not as much of a burner as he was in Washington. He's refined his game, and I think he's pretty much just there. He's a depth guy. He's able to catch the football, and his route running's above average. That's pretty much all I've got for him.
I think that what his ability will be is after the catch. I think that's definitely where he kind of thrives. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't think it'll be too much. But again, another safe pair of hands for Josh Allen. I think they needed to get at least one guy to fill the void of Beasley and Emmanuel Sanders leaving. And I think they did that very much with Jamison Crowder. A good guy, will probably be there for a year, up there in age. But I do think it was a good signing. And I don't think he's a guy who will eat into too many of those targets to Gabe Davis, to Stefan Diggs. But yeah, I like the signing. Not much to say there. If we're missing something significant, make sure you guys comment down below. But we'll go into another one. And this one, we always talk about the trouble of analyzing offensive linemen. And they signed Roger Saffold from the Tennessee Titans. How would you kind of preview him going into this season? So, Dylan, we always have the trouble of how do you analyze an offensive lineman? And I don't think we're mature yet to do that, but I think we can try.
And they
signed, but we're right. I think we can. And they signed Titans offensive guard Roger Saffold, bulking that offensive line. What is your thoughts on that, and how do you think he'll impact going into this year?
This is interesting for me because it's hard to rank a Titans interior lineman knowing that Derrick Henry is the guy he is. And it's also hard to see where he fits in this scheme because the Bills didn't really have a run game last year. And now Dable's gone, and it's Ken Dorsey, who's never managed a run game in his life, who's going to be calling plays. So it's interesting for me. I think it's more of just do they trust this guy to be able to block the other guy? They're not going to really fit him into any sort of scheme per se. He's kind of just going to be there beating out the defensive tackle. It's a tough ask, but I think that's what they're going to ask him to do. They're just going to be like, you know what? Don't let him get to the runner or the passer.
Which is what they ask of every offensive lineman.
No, but there's a difference in that they're not running a zone scheme. They're not running a wide scheme. They're just asking him specifically because the other guys, Dawkins, they've got Bates, they've got more. They are running probably. It's hard to explain because I don't think that Ken Dorsey has managed a run game before. He hasn't. That's a fact. And I don't know what he's going to implicate to this run game that's going to make it any better, which is one of my biggest problems with the team this year. He hasn't called a play in his career. So where does Roger Saffold fit in? I think he's just a spot-for-spot replacement for Feliciano, to be honest.
Yeah. I think that's. I mean, again, only 2 sacks allowed last year, 5 penalties, PFF grade of 69.3. So it's not fantastic, but yeah, I mean, I think again, it's one of those things where I think it was a good sign. I think Saffold had his best years on the Rams. But besides that, he's been a good, it's a good addition for the Bills. I think he's an upgrade from Feliciano. I feel like Feliciano might be bigger than him, but nonetheless, Saffold's 6'5", 320. So big dude. And yeah, I mean, I think they'll ask him how they ask most guys, and that's block the guy ahead of you. And I think I would hope they implement a run game with James Cook, who we'll talk about later, but I guess we won't know. But we'll move on now to our next player, and that is the big signing, Von Miller, who they signed to a 6-year deal worth 100 and how much was it? 150?
I think it was 140.
140. That's what it sounds like. But Dylan, now the real impact, the big offseason addition. How does this change the Buffalo Bills pass rush? How does it start the Buffalo Bills pass rush?
Here is something. You make a mistake once, you learn from it. In this case, I don't think I'm going to. When Von Miller was cut by the Broncos and picked up by the Los Angeles Rams, I said, I don't think this is going to do anything. And you know what Von Miller did? He went and he helped the Rams win a Super Bowl. He was a key piece to that Super Bowl win.
It was 120.
Now Von Miller is getting paid by the Buffalo Bills. Yet the thought is in my mind that I still don't think he's going to do that much.
Yeah.
I think he has everything he needs to do a lot. But I think that they want to push Rousseau into that left edge role, and they have Boogie Basham on. Like, I don't think that he was needed.
AJ Epinesa.
Yeah, the AJ Epinesa. He wasn't needed as much as they paid him for.
And that's the thing. I love Von Miller. I think I like the signing, but signing a 33-year-old to a 6, like I really don't understand like actually what they were thinking. Like, what is that?
He's not going to make that much money. It's not a lot of guaranteed money.
Yeah. It's 20 mil a year. I really think he'll be a 1-year kind of guy. Like, I think he'll be this year and then maybe, but again, and to me, it leaves a sour taste in my mouth about Von Miller, because it looks like ring chasing to me. But yeah, I mean, Dylan, you're right. We have a clip on YouTube that everyone can take a picture of it, screenshot. It literally says Von Miller won't impact the Rams, which I believed in also. And obviously that was very wrong. But I'm in agreement with you here. I don't think. I think he'll be good, and I think he'll add an element of fear to this Buffalo Bills pass rush. But in terms of impact, I think why he was so impactful with the Rams is because they had Floyd, and because they had Aaron Donald, and because they had Sebastian Joseph Day, and they had a lot of guys who caused problems on the offensive line. So Von Miller was consistently 1v1, where here he'll most likely get double teamed. And Von Miller is a fantastic edge rusher. He's not where he was, and I think a lot of the problems he can cause will be mitigated if he gets double teamed. He's not a massive edge rusher. He's a pretty light, not skinny, but not incredibly bulky guy. And at the age of 33, he's lost a little bit of that speed. So I don't think the impact will be super significant, but I do think it adds obviously some fear to opposing offensive lines.
Yeah, what I think the most significant impact Von Miller is going to have is he is going to teach the trade to Epinesa and to Gregory Rousseau. That's what I think is going to be the most important impact he has. And it may end up being that Epinesa or Rousseau is the next coming of the guy. So we've got that to watch.
Let's hope. But that will finish off let's not, I guess it's not hope, but let's move on now to our next segment. So we obviously offseason additions. Now we'll get into definitely an interesting thing, and that's the NFL draft. I think a lot of teams didn't have great drafts, but I think the Bills definitely had a very, very good draft. And we'll go into the guy that we were talking about so much before. We definitely had our opinions on before, and that is Florida Gators corner who they drafted in the first round, Kaiir Elam, a guy who's kind of falling, started off the draft process, and he was a top 3 guy, a guy you would think would be taken 20 above, 20 or higher, but then fell a little bit, and the Bills got him. I think he adds an imposing, kind of physical trait to this defense. But what do you think about the Kaiir Elam selection?
And I think Kaiir Elam is the real deal.
Yeah.
And I think he is 6'2". He is physical.
Mm-hmm.
He's a great tackler. And he is a machine when it comes to going up for the football. Mm-hmm. He doesn't always intercept it, but he will knock that ball down. He does not let you catch it on a deep ball. And I think just the contrast of having Tredavius White, who won't let the quarterback even target you, to having Kaiir Elam, where the quarterback, he might go up and chuck it up, but your receiver's not going to catch it anyway. Having that contrast, it gives the quarterbacks a lot to fear. And if the Bills were the generally ridiculously smart organization that I think they are, they're going to go out and sign a slot corner before this free agency is over. And then that's going to be the best secondary we've seen in the last 5 years. So
no.
Who?
Dylan, we haven't even seen Kaiir have a snap.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
I think it could be. But
if Kaiir Elam plays that, yeah, I should have said that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the Chargers right now have the best secondary in the league.
Nah. I think that the Chargers secondary is heavily overrated, but we'll get there when we get there.
All right. Well, let's move on. Sorry. I mean, same thing with Elam. I really like him. I think I wouldn't have liked him if they took him earlier, but they obviously he fell. And I think 6'2", imposing. I think they added a fear factor to this defense. They added LM, they added Von Miller, they basically looked at the Chiefs game and were like, what went wrong here? And let's sign players that will make this not happen. Edge rusher, you can get to the quarterback.
They probably
quickly.
should have went out and got another
Allen.
defensive coordinator then.
Yeah. Well, that's always the looming issue, but he did great until then. But yeah, I really, I like the LM move. I think it was a great pick, and I think the Bills have proven time and time again, good teams have good people who make good choices, and LM was a good choice pick. But now we'll move on to my favorite pick, arguably my favorite pick of the draft, and that was when they took Georgia running back and Dalvin Cook's brother, James Cook, out of Georgia, as I just said. You're not excited, but what do you think the impact? Do you think he'll go in and immediately be the 3-down back? Because I've heard a lot of different stuff. A lot of people saying he'll be the receiving back. He won't really be an impact. And how do you think this kind of impacts the other running backs they have there?
I think he's going to be the receiving back, and it's going to be a very big impact because that Bills team doesn't run the ball a lot. And I think losing Dable and having Ken Dorsey as their offensive coordinator is going to minimize the amount they run the ball. Devin Singletary has fumble problems. They tend to take Singletary out when he does fumble. So Cook may get a lot of runs, but I think he's going to be primarily used as a catching back, and that's where he's going to get the ball more. Because last season when Zach Moss was the starting running back for a couple of games, Devin Singletary was the receiving back, and Devin Singletary was more productive. So even if the guy is the power back, he's the tailback, he's there most of the time in the backfield, the receiving back is going to be the one who gets the ball more in this offense. So I think while James Cook might not be the starter per se, he might not get 20 rush attempts a game, he is going to have a much more productive year than Devin Singletary, and I think he's going to end up being the most productive rookie running back this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at his motor, and I think the comparison is always to Dalvin Cook. Downhill, he's incredible. And I think this draft class was very, very, very kind of different in terms of what we've seen. We haven't seen a draft class like this. We haven't seen, there were 3 incredible downhill runners in this class: James Cook, Breece Hall, Kenneth Murray, all guys who Kenneth Walker. When I said that, I was like, that's not that. Like, I never mind. That didn't sound right. Kenneth Walker. You have 3 guys who really can get downhill and are fast and and unfortunately, Dylan, for the Dolphins, 2 of the guys went to teams in your division. I would like
about that.
Yeah, I think I'm wrong. I would like to see James Cook be the 3-down back, the guy they give most of the carries to. I guess maybe that won't be, but again, out of the backfield, receiving wise, he's still electric. So I think it was a great selection. They got him the 3rd round, also, I believe. So just value wise, or maybe it was 2nd round. Excuse me. I think it was 2nd round. I think value wise, it was just fantastic. But now we'll move on to another offensive player they drafted and another pick I just absolutely loved. I think they hit on all kind of the 4 rookies we'll talk about. And that's when they took Khalil Shakir, wide receiver out of Boise State, a guy who I kind of was notified about later in the draft process. But I just think he is going to be very, very – he's going to add another dimension to this offense, which is very hard to do considering how good this offense is. But Dylan, what do you think about Khalil Shakir?
Not going to lie, I found it very hard to watch film on Khalil Shakir because of the field he played on. It was blue. It was really weird.
Yeah.
But when I did manage to catch a couple of glimpses of his away games, I liked what he did. He looked like honestly a common gadget guy, and I don't really think that's going to be met with as much of a punch as it is for wide receivers on the boundaries as a rookie. I think he's going to be able to come into this offense and do exactly what he did in college, and maybe not for the same numbers as he did, but I think the role isn't going to change at all. I think he's going to be that jet sweep, maybe get him out of the backfield, short slants. Debo. I'm not going to say Debo because he's not that physical, but
I think he is, though.
He's not that physical.
I think you look at what he was so good as. He made these miraculous one-handed catches in one-on-one coverage. So I think he adds like a more than Debo. He's not going to be better than Debo, but I think he adds like Debo is incredible. A lot. I'm not saying he's better than Debo, but Debo obviously, is so hard to guard, versatile. But I think he adds the slightly worse factor of Debo. Like you can run him on jet sweeps. You can run the ball. He's fast. He's big, a little bit skinnier than Debo. Debo's a pretty burly guy. But then I don't think that's the right word to describe Debo. Not burly, but like a bigger dude.
But he is, yeah.
Yeah. But I feel like, yeah, never mind. But Khalil Shakir, I think also then adds you can throw it up one-on-one deep, which I think you can do to Debo. But what are you laughing at?
I'm sorry. What's it called? Description of Debo. Now I'm thinking of like a security guard.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. That's why I thought it was wrong. But yeah, but I think Khalil Shakir downfield, he adds that, like, physically, since he's a taller guy, can get those one-handed miraculous catches. So that's kind of why I think Khalil Shakir was a great pick. And I think in terms of value, doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, value is the great pick. And now we got to get into the next
Now we got to get
into
into this. And I'm going to tell you watching right now,
if
you don't think Matt Arriaza is going to have a huge impact for the Buffalo Bills and the NFL as a whole, you are mistaken. Because I think Matt Arriaza.
I'm going to tell you right now, the Buffalo Bills are going to lead the league in safeties by a lot.
I'm telling you right now, Matt Arriaza is going to be the best punter ever.
I might agree with you.
He's going to be the best punter ever.
Agree with you.
The dude is ridiculous. Like ridiculous. Like God-given leg.
He has to beat out the scary Matt Hawk in the punter duel.
Can we talk about how he wasn't the first punter taken?
Yeah.
How is that?
The reasoning was directional punting. They say he needs work on punting it to this side or this side. Like, who cares?
Who cares? He can bomb it 80 yards.
Yeah, he's just going to pin you down at the one.
He punted it. Did you see his punt in OTAs? He hit like an 80-yard punt down. Like, it's ridiculous.
It was unbelievable.
Like, actually unbelievable.
Yeah, like I could not believe it when I saw it.
Yeah, I'm telling you, if you don't think he's going to have an impact, you are very much mistaken, my friend.
I think the problem was with him not going first overall. And I saw this segment on the Stay Hot podcast. Not first overall, sorry. First punter taken. First overall. The first punter taken. I saw this segment on the Stay Hot podcast. They were talking about how being a punter is the easiest job. Just kick the ball 80 yards. The defensive coordinator and offensive coordinator never going to get mad at you because they're mad at whoever forced the punt anyway. And then they got into joking about having system punters and blah, blah, blah. And what I kind of saw with what the Ravens did by taking Stout and with what the Buccaneers did by taking whoever they took. They
took the guy before Ariza or Arriaza.
Arriaza.
I'm not sure his name was.
It's Arriaza. Yeah.
Arriaza, yeah.
We're seeing them take guys that fit their special teams scheme, like directional punters, better hang time. Like they're looking at the analytics.
Which, I mean, it's not like stupid. It's a business.
It's not stupid, but like Matt Arriaza can punt the ball from end zone to end zone and pin it down at the one.
Yeah. Like not only that,
no one
he
else
doesn't just boot it. He can like place it.
Yeah. Nobody else in the history of special teams has had that talent.
Yeah.
So like, will Jordan Stout be a top 5 punter in the league in a couple of years? Sure, maybe. I don't know.
I don't think I can name 5 punters.
I'll tell you that Matt Arriaza is going to be the best punter
ever
in the league, like this year.
I think he's already the best punter in the league.
I agree.
I already think he's the best punter in the league. All right, well,
that's our segment about.
That's our segment about Matt Arriaza, and I was planning that for the entire video. I knew exactly.
Yeah,
what I was
thinking about that too.
But now we'll move into arguably the most interesting part of the video. It's an interesting part of the season. That's our record predictions and kind of season preview. So Dylan, we'll go to you first. Preview the Bills going to this season, kind of give a final thoughts, and then end it off with your record prediction.
All right, the offense is star-studded. They've got Josh Allen and Stefan Diggs. That is their star studs. They don't need any more to become star-studded. That is all they need. They've got Dawson Knox, who is unbelievably underrated in the red zone. They've got Devin Singletary, who had a great start end the last season. They brought in James Cook in the draft, and they've pretty much solidified positions that they weren't sure about. Mm-hmm. But the net negative that I was talking about earlier is the loss of Brian Dable and the addition of Ken Dorsey. I'm sure Ken Dorsey would be amazing as an offensive coordinator for a quarterback that wasn't solidified. But Josh Allen is nowhere near the problem the Bills might have on this offense, and I'm not sure that Dorsey can fix it, while I think Dable could have. So where I think the run game was where they lost to the Chiefs because they couldn't run the football and they couldn't run the clock out when they had the opportunities to. And the Chiefs were able to go out and score every time they got the football. If they had the ability to just ground and pound and get yards, that would never have happened. Now with Dorsey, they're not fixing that. And I know the defense is the bigger problem in that Chiefs game, but there is something to be said about time of possession. So I think the net negative isn't the players, it's the scheme. The defensive side of the ball got improved. And that is through Von Miller, that is through Kyer Elam, and that is through what's it called? That is through just the continuity of some of the younger players. So you're seeing the second year for a guy like Gregory Rousseau. You're seeing the third or fourth year for Ed Oliver. You're seeing Boogie Basham come into his second year, Epinesa into his third year. So you're just seeing guys that are young getting more experienced. And then the linebacking core, which we didn't talk about at all, Matt Milano, Tremaine Edmonds, that's a great linebacking core that I don't think we talked about. I said Matt Milano's name once. That's one of the best linebacking cores in the league, in my opinion. Yeah. So, and then the secondary we discussed for a good amount of time. You know how I stand there. This could be the best secondary in the league very easily. I think this is going to be an outstanding team, but I think in the NFL current day, which is why I'm going to predict their record to be 12-5. I'm going to say it right here. It's difficult. It's difficult to say this team has a big flaw that's going to cause them to lose games, but they're just going to lose games because that's how it goes. So I'm not going to predict any team to win more than 13 games. I'm not going to do that. But the Bills are right there. They're a top 5 team, top 3 team in the league.
Yeah, I think that's the same thing. I think Josh Allen can be the reason you win games. Josh Allen can be the reason you lose games. And I think that's why I have them at 12-5 also. I think the Bills going into this season do not have many holes. 100% can go and win a Super Bowl. I think what they've brought in the offseason has addressed several of their problems. They brought in a guy who can add speed to a pass rush that hasn't really had a speedy edge rusher. They've added a physically imposing cornerback where Tredavius White's imposing, but physically he's not a very big guy. Obviously, he's still fantastic. They brought in a running back who I think could be a 3-down guy, even if they don't want him to be. A great downhill runner, which they haven't had in a long time. And they brought in a receiver who can be versatile across the line of scrimmage. They can run the ball. And then you have Josh Allen. You have Stefan Diggs. I think the loss of Dable will definitely play a part early in the season. That's why I think maybe some of those games they lose. I still think Ken Dorsey will be great. I think he was a massive reason why Josh Allen was so good or was produced to be so good and was developed. And I think this Bills team will be fantastic. And I think they are a Super Bowl contender and arguably a Super Bowl favorite. And I think this is a year Josh Allen can win the MVP. Even Mahomes said he thinks Josh Allen will win the MVP next before he does. I wouldn't be surprised if Josh Allen does this year. I think it's all set up for him. So the Bills, it is all in your court. Let's see what you can do. But that was it for our Buffalo Bills bust or boom video. And I think we can both say boom, Dylan.
I'm certainly
That's what we should add to the end. Boom.
Yeah, I like that.
All right,
bust or boom. My answer's boom.
My answer's boom. So we hope you guys did enjoy. Kean McDermott, Dylan Shalom. Make sure you guys subscribe. Follow us on social media at TheeSportsScoop, TikTok, Instagram. We post a ton of clips from podcasts and other stuff. So make sure you guys follow us over there. And the summer's coming. More videos like this. We're going to try and get out every single NFL team. So make sure you guys stay tuned. We'll be doing your favorite team. Make sure you comment what teams you want to do down below. And as always, comment any comments or concerns that you have about the video. Kean McDermott, Dylan Shalom. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.